And the newspaper front pages make for uncomfortable reading for the SNP this morning. Calls for USAF to suspend Sturgeon as crisis mounts. Pressure grows on Sturgeon to quit SNP. And we're not skint. That last one in the Metro, paraphrasing Ian Blackford, the former Westminster leader of the SNP. It's all come off the back of leaked footage of Nicola Sturgeon speaking to the party's governing body, the National Executive Committee, or NEC, back in March 2021. In the video, which was published by the Sunday Mail, she downplays any suggestion of financial issues at the SNP. It came days before the party was reported to the police.
Just be very careful, all of us, about suggestions that there are problems with the party's finances, because we depend on donors to donate. There are no reasons for people to be concerned about the party's finances, and all of us need to be careful about not suggesting that there is.
Well, we mentioned Mr Blackford's comments in the introduction. Ian Blackford MP is with us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Laura.
This story just continues to dominate the headlines. I'm looking at the Scotsman. Calls on USAF to suspend Sturgeon as crisis mounts. Should Nicola Sturgeon be suspended from the SNP while investigations carried out?
Goodness gracious, absolutely not. There is no reason for that at all. That's, I think, some of our opponents that are politicking, really, Laura, in this context. Let's just reflect on what the First Minister has done for us. She's been a frontline politician in the SNP, has been elected to the Scottish Parliament in 1999, led us as First Minister, and I'm, for one, are proud of what she's achieved. And
yet the leaked video at the weekend, at the weekend shows she knew and she was clear as to what was going on and the seriousness of it.
I think when you listen to that clip that was broadcast at the weekend, what the First Minister was reflecting on was the ability of the SNP to conduct itself as an organisation, having the financial resources in order to fight elections and to support its members, and that's exactly what she was doing. There is nothing which is in any way untoward on that clip that was shown over the course of the weekend.
It says, just be very careful about suggestions that there are problems with the party's finances. We depend on donors and there are no reasons for people to be concerned about the party's finances, and all of us need to be careful about suggesting there is. It was 3 months before an investigation was launched by the police. The party was reported just days after that. There have been resignations about issues about transparency in the party's finances. Are all of these people wrong?
You know, Laura, I think what we need to reflect on is that the SNP is a political party, the same as any other political party, lodges their accounts with the Electoral Commission on an annual basis. We've done that ever since that regime came in more than 20 years ago. Our accounts are audited. That will happen this year as well, by the way.
By whom?
Accounts will be lodged by, auditors will be put in place, and the accounts will be lodged with the Electoral Commission in a timely manner, as is always the case.
How many auditors have you approached to look through the party's finances?
Well, I am not responsible for approaching auditors, but I'm satisfied.
But yet you're on the radio talking about the party's finances. I think it would be a sensible suggestion to have looked at how many auditors that have been approached.
Well, look, there are discussions which are taking place. There's progress that's been made, but the fundamental point is that the SNP is in a position to conduct its activities, as you referred to earlier in the remarks that I made over the course of the weekend. The SNP is solvent. We're able to meet our liabilities. There's been talk about potentially a by-election in Rutherglen over the coming period. We will be able to fund that campaign as we've always done, and the SNP will continue to operate as we have done for many decades, and will continue to do so over the course of the coming period.
Mr Blackford, you sound pretty categorical there that the SNP's books are balanced and that there are no problems. Have you had access to the figures?
I've had conversations with people over the course of the last few days, and I think, look, when you reflect on where the SNP is... Have you
spoken to Treasurer Colin Beattie? Because he told the meeting of the NEC at the weekend that it's proving difficult to balance the books.
No, that's actually, I had a readout from that meeting, and what was said at the meeting is that the SNP's accounts are in balance. I think what there is there's selective reporting that has reached
he went on to say,
over the course of the last few days. But
we need to find money or we'll be cutting our tail until there's nothing left, is another quote that's taken from that meeting. Are all of these quotes incorrect? Did Colin Beattie not say these things?
What I'm saying to you is that the SNP is still a large membership party. We have more than 70,000 members We have donors giving to the party. Parliamentarians make a contribution. The SNP will continue to operate as it has been doing in order that we support our members, in order that we support the leader, in order that we fight elections, by-elections. We'll be ready for the general election next year. This is, if I may say so, a bit of a media frenzy which is taking place at the moment, and there is no question about the SNP funding its operations, whether that's in the short term.
It's not just a media frenzy, though, is it? There is a police investigation underway. There are reports in the Telegraph this morning that appear in quotations that Nicola Sturgeon will quit sooner rather than later. Do you think she should quit?
I think what you're seeing is idle speculation which is taking place. I speak to my colleague Nicola on a very regular basis, and I can tell you that she's focused on serving the interests of her constituents.
Is she at least becoming a distraction to what should be happening as Hamza Yusuf returns to Parliament?
You know, I think history will judge all of us, and the history, I think, will show a woman that's led our country, that led us through the COVID pandemic, that has given inspiring leadership to all of us over the course of the period that she's been in leadership. She's still got an awful lot to give.
And yet, so much attention to detail there, but no attention to detail perhaps when it came to falling numbers of party members and the finances. I want to look at the finances.
Laura, you made a statement there, and if I go back to the period of the referendum, 2014, SNP membership was considerably smaller than it is now. The SNP membership has risen dramatically over the course of the last year period.
Fallen back.
But that happens. What you tend to get in political parties, the numbers tend to rise and fall. The fact is the SNP has more members than every other party in Scotland combined. I want to see that membership increase again. I'm sure it will in the period ahead. But this is a successful, large membership party, and let's not distract from that.
Has the party repaid Peter Murrell?
I am not aware of the details of that relationship, but for the purposes of cash flow, it was appropriate for that loan to be put in place, and of course that will be dealt with in the normal course of events. So cash flow was an issue. One of the big revelations of the past week. No, but I think what you have particular pinch points, particularly around election campaigns, as what that was, and it would be normal for the party to make sure that it had resources in place so that it can meet its obligations and use its cash flow to meet any debt liability. That's normal. You were leader of the Westminster group until last December. We heard last week that the auditors Johnson and Carmichael had resigned in September last year. When were you told that they had resigned? Of course, what happened was that Johnson Carmichael stood down as the auditors of the SNP, and as a consequence of that, as the auditors for the Westminster group. So I was told in a timely manner that had happened. When was that? The SNP, that was towards the tail end of last year, after Johnson Carmichael have submitted their resignation. And by the way, these things happen. It's right. Can I just say, Laura, because it's important, that organisations will review their arrangements in appointing auditors. It's right that you do that under appropriate corporate governance guidelines. And of course, the Westminster Group, let me just say quite categorically, the SNP Westminster Group will submit its accounts under the normal circumstances by the time required. And there is no reason... That deadline is May the 31st this year. If the party's accounts don't have an auditor's certificate, they will lose out on what's known as short money. I'm explaining this for the audience, Mr Blackford. That's over £1 million worth of public funding that you could miss out on if you don't get that stamp of approval. I'm being quite specific with you that the deadlines that are there for the SNP Westminster Group to submit their accounts will be met, and there is no reason for anyone, and of course we're talking about the interests of those that work for the SNP Group, will be met. And what we're seeing is, I think... So you're saying categorically that you will meet the May the 31st deadline despite the fact that you don't yet have an auditor in place? I am telling you quite categorically that the SNP Westminster Group will meet its obligations and the accounts will be lodged. Did you tell your successor, Stephen Flynn, that the auditors had resigned whenever you did a handover to him in December? I have ongoing relationships with my successor, as indeed did my other senior office bearers, and all appropriate information to do with the finances of the Westminster Group has been handed over to those that have responsibility for that. Did you tell him in December when he took over as leader? I mean, I've been quite specific, Laura. What I've said to you, that all the relevant information, because there's a lot of information that needs to be passed over, either by myself or by my other office bearers, and the person that had responsibility under my guidance, under my leadership for staff matters, for financial matters, with my deputy Kirsten Oswald, and a very firm and detailed briefing was given to Stephen and his team at that point.
Ian Blackford, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.